Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Careers and Coffee. My name is Kaylee and I shall be your host for today's show with my colleague Jordan helping behind the scenes today. Today we have Emma and Alex on the show and we are going to be focusing on the importance of inclusivity within business and why diversity and inclusivity education is important and how they both do this through their work. So let's welcome Emma and Alex. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Hiya.
Hello, it's so great to have you both here.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just dive straight in because we've got so many questions to get through and I know you both are just going to have some amazing information for us. So yeah, to kick it off, what are both your current working roles and what do you do within these roles?
Alex, you want to go first?
All right, then you got them before me. So I do a lot of things, actually. I guess career-wise, I'm an actor, is the first thing I should say. So I've been professionally acting for nearly 7 years now. I am also CEO of a company called House of Pride, which I also co-founded just over 2 years ago. And I am co-founder of a company called Shades. So House of Pride is essentially an organisation for queer, female and non-binary people. Shades is an organisation for South Asian creatives. And I'm also head of programmes at a tech startup called Workin, which is very much focused in DEI work in larger companies. So that's, I think that's pretty much most of what I do. What about you, Emma?
You wear a lot of hats, Alex.
I do.
So I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Delivery at Unleashed, which is a new HR and D&I consultancy. And we help organisations be successful by making them more inclusive. And we work across the employee life cycle to make sure that clients can identify, develop and deploy their talent without bias. I'm also an associate facilitator, so I deliver quite a few workshops on behalf of organisations to their clients that look at different concepts within diversity and inclusion, whether that's inclusive behaviours, race equity, LGBT inclusion, mental health, etc. And I'm also a mentor, so I support people that are looking to get into the world of D&I, and I help them identify their goals and hopefully build their confidence as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. You both sound very, very busy. So like you said, both wearing lots of hats there. And do you know what, that kind of leads into the next question. I think you both have given a bit of information around it already, but I'll still ask, obviously, in case you want to give a little bit more. But for both of you, really, I just wanted to see if there's any more details that you want to give. So, for example, Emma, on your new role as Director of Community Engagement and Delivery, kind of what does that kind of encompass? And Alex, yourself as well. I know we've spoken before about your business, House of Pride. So yeah, what are your main aims and why are these both really important?
So this is a new role for me. I've only been in the role a couple of weeks. So still trying to find my feet and figure out what that looks like. But alongside that, I founded my own consultancy called Culture and Connect, and this is where Alex and I kind of work together on that. And for me, it was about the murder of George Floyd last year and the subsequent Black Lives Matter movement that followed. I think a lot of organisations started waking up to the importance of D&I, and there were quite a lot of big statements that were made from people and companies who just said, you know, we need to do more. And it's like we had a sudden shift where traditional D&I practices or approaches were in the past, and suddenly there was this new energy to do things a bit differently. People wanted to change the status quo. They wanted to challenge things a bit more and just take D&I more seriously and investing in lots of roles as well. And I saw lots of companies recruiting for D&I managers and heads of D&I. My LinkedIn was just popping all the time. But I did wonder if a lot of it was performative, or if it was genuine. And so I started Culture and Connect in response to a lot of that, because I wanted to change the narrative a bit and create spaces where people could connect and build relationships at a much deeper level. I also wanted to amplify the voices of those that were impacted by toxic workplace cultures, because they do exist, unfortunately. And create a space for people to ask questions, those really uncomfortable questions that they've probably never asked before, and to sit in the discomfort of what it's like to experience things like racism, and any form of discrimination, and what allyship looks like, because we're moving past just talking now. We need to act, and we need to do things a bit differently. So for me, the aim at Culture and Connect is just to explore workplace culture and help people find better ways of connecting to D&I.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. That's really powerful. And Alex as well. How about yourself? Kind of what are the aims for you?
Well, with House of Pride specifically, and I'll talk about that because that's how Emma and I sort of work together with Culture and Connect and House of Pride. As I mentioned, it's a company for specifically queer, female and non-binary people. And myself and my co-founder started the company really to give a voice and create a space for people who identified within that community, because it's a minority within a minority, right? The LGBT community is really seen through the lens of gay white men a lot of the time, cis men at that. And so, yeah, we wanted to give a voice and a platform to people who didn't fit that mold. So our main aim really is to create physical spaces where that community and allies can really get together to thrive personally, professionally, and creatively. So myself and my co-founder are both actors, and we sort of underpinned House of Pride with a lot of creative practices. And again, that's where Emma and I link up as well, because with Culture and Connect and House of Pride, we offer trainings, workplace trainings that are rooted in creativity. So using that creative part of our brain and practices to look at D&I specifically within the LGBT lens when it comes to House of Pride, and how people can connect to that journey and that community and that movement, even if they're not necessarily part of that community. And I just feel like creativity is such an interesting and different way to access that world as well.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And do you know what? You're both doing such powerful and needed work as well. And so for those, like for the students watching, what do both of your average work days look like? Now, I know it's probably not going to look the same every day because of the work you're doing, but yeah, if there's sort of that average work day, so what's that look like for both of you?
So for me, I've never really had an average work day. I used to be a police officer years and years and years ago, and they always said, you know, in the police, you never have 2 days the same. And that is true. Some days could be boring, some days could be quite challenging and different. But, you know, throughout my career, it has been quite varied. And so now working in D&I, dependent on what organisation I'm working with and what their needs are, it could be writing strategy, delivering workshops on training, moving beyond unconscious bias training and things like that. It's different. There's the consultancy side, which is looking at those bigger projects, I guess, where you work with HR or network groups and you figure out what their workplace culture is and you try to support that and better that. You know, in the main, a lot of what I do is just talking to people and influencing them, hopefully in a positive way.
Thank you. And Alex, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really beautiful way to end as well. And I think a lot of what I do is talking to people and trying to connect with them. I think if there's one common thing throughout my working day, that's what it is. Constantly talking to people, trying to establish some sort of connection, either if I'm trying to start a program with the company that I'm head of programs for at the DEI company work in, or if at House of Pride we're delivering a training or I'm doing a talk, or I'm working with, say, a new partner collaborator. or as an actor if I'm in a scene and I'm trying to connect with another person. I think that's the common denominator. But apart from that, there really is no 2 days the same. So as you can see at the moment, I'm unexpectedly in a car on the side of a motorway. I'll be doing some emails later. The most consistent I've ever had a job, I used to work in financial services at one of the big banks on and off for 8 years or so. And so that was the most sort of regular job I had. But even then I was still auditioning and still doing other things and still working with employee resource groups. So yeah, constantly shifting, a lot of emails and a lot of talking to people.
I love that though, and that is just so nice to hear, like both of you talking about connection and why that's so important as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Emma, up until, so you were let me get this right, a diversity and inclusion manager. So
Yeah.
this was up until recently. So you mentioned before you moved to HR and D&I consultancy Unleashed. I think I got that correct. So yeah, and you're director of community engagement and delivery. So we've touched on it slightly already, but why is it important that businesses focus on inclusion and diversity and not have it as just a tick box exercise?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Unfortunately, so many businesses are still in that space of it being a tick box exercise. I think the difference now is that there's much more, people are much more empowered to talk and call things out. So those businesses are really under pressure now to be outside of that tick box space that they're in. I just think it should be a fundamental part of any business now. I think there's a misconception that D&I is a new thing when actually it's existed for decades, and the case for it has always been there. You know, there's so much research on workplace cultures and workplace inclusion, but I think a lot of it gets ignored because the people in power, the ones who have that platform to spearhead a lot of the work, just haven't. And unfortunately, we've seen the consequences of that over the last couple of years. It impacts people's mental health and well-being as well, on their ability to be productive and overall on people's ability to thrive in the workplace. And we know, again, I mentioned research earlier, but we know that when people are in environments where they feel truly valued, they feel like they belong, and in turn, they're able to perform really well, which also results in low turnover rates. I've walked into organisations, I've not felt like they're for me, and over the years I've felt more empowered to leave and to go somewhere where I will be valued and where I will be seen. I think it also accelerates business growth. It boosts innovation and creativity. Companies can make better decisions that are in the interest of their people, not just commercial decisions. And companies are seen as more socially responsible as well, especially now, you know, with our young people coming through. And according to Deloitte, 67% of job seekers use diversity as a factor when they're considering where they want to go and their job offers. So it boosts talent attraction. You know, there's all these reasons why it's good for business. And I think I just want to say, you know, touch on what I said earlier about people feeling more empowered to speak up and challenge the status quo. I think what's happened over the last 2 years with George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the pandemic, if businesses don't see what they need to do, then they will be left behind. It's as simple as that. You know, it's not good enough anymore for businesses to do the bare minimum. People want to see change and they want to see it rapidly. Alex and I know that this work never stops. We're always going to be banging that drum and fighting the good fight. Change is incremental, but organisations have to move now. And if they keep producing the same ideas, they're just going to become outdated and get left behind. The world is changing, and I think organisations just need to change and adapt with it, because it's 2021, you know, there's no excuses.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And do you know what, that leads us into live question that we've got coming through, which is a great question as well. So, what can I do to influence change on diversity and inclusion in my organisation? Who wants to take that question?
Go on, Alex, you can have that.
All right. Feel free to add anything if I miss it, Emma. I'll try and keep it succinct, but because I'm aware we don't have a huge amount of time left. But I would say it really depends on what type of organization you're working with to start off with. Because if it's a small organization, then you're more likely to have those one-on-one connections, and you can actually affect change from the ground up more often than not. But if you're in a large global organization, obviously your approach has to be a little bit different. And there are various ways that you can get into it. So you can go to your sort of HR function, you can join an employee resource group. I always like to start as small as possible, because I think when you do have those one-to-one conversations, chats, and you're changing people's minds and hearts individually, that's so much more impactful. And you can really feel that immediately. So I love to start from there and then sort of work your way to strategically affecting D&I decisions, because it's all going to have an impact. So if you're working in a global organization and you're in a particular function, I'd say, okay, well, what's D&I like in this function? Split out into mental health and well-being. What's the gender split? What's the ethnicity split? And even if that's only 20 people, you start from there and then you grow and grow. And that would be my recommendation, and just having those one-on-one conversations. Anything you want to add, Emma?
I think you said it all, but I'd probably just say, just be mindful of your own capacity to do this. I'm not sure what your role is in the organisation, but if this is almost like a passion project, just be mindful that you're not the go-to person or the poster person for all of the issues that might be there in your organisation, because you will burn out and it can be really exhausting. Seek out where the D&I is in your organisation, if there's a team or a D&I manager or a head of D&I, and then start there. But as Alex said, it's just those conversations that you have with people at the more grassroots level. And then if there is a strategy in place, a D&I strategy, find out where that is and what the priorities are, because that will kind of shape where you go and the things that you want to get involved in. But first and foremost, just look after yourself, because this isn't easy work. It's really difficult, but it's also really beautiful as well. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. And I know, Alex, you wear lots of hats, but there's always a D&I lens in our work.
Yeah. That's really great advice. Thank you so much. And we've spoken a bit, obviously, we've spoken about diversity and inclusion in the workplace, but actually thinking about it in schools. So why is it really important that this education is in schools as well, and it's happening in schools?
Without wanting to burst into song, I believe that children are our future. They really are. So schools need to be thinking about how they approach D&I education and how they dovetail it within the curriculum. Whether that be kids learning about young people, whether that be young people learning about the issues they care about, the environment, social justice, LGBT inclusion, same-sex families, whatever. It's just about organisations, schools, allowing young people just to celebrate difference and understand what culture looks like and what different cultures look like and what some of the barriers there might be. Because I go into workplaces now, Alex and I go into workplaces now, and we're speaking to adults. Some of these people have been in the world of work for nearly 30 years, and we're teaching them about difference and culture and the negative impacts that discrimination can have on people that they work with, purely based on your identity. We're teaching them about bias. We're teaching them about social constructs, systemic issues, racism, etc. And we're effectively asking people to challenge their own biases and their own beliefs in a 2-hour session or a 3-hour session. So we're unpacking 30 or so years of habits that are so ingrained in people. And one unconscious bias workshop is not going to solve that. So it's crucial that we're talking about these things to our young people from when they're at school, because hopefully they'll go into the workplace and they'll grow up as compassionate, inclusive adults who will be the future leaders. Because in all honesty, I'm meeting adults now that are inclusive and compassionate and amazing, but equally I'm meeting adults that can't separate their beliefs, their toxic beliefs, and their behaviours, which has a direct impact on marginalised people. So yeah, we need to get in there at an early age, I think, and that starts in the home, it starts in the community, and it starts at school.
Absolutely. I'm really interested to know how school culture and your education journey were for you, were for you both, and did this have an impact on what you wanted to do as a career?
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for a particularly feminist teacher teaching me feminist literature and scholarship, then I wouldn't have gone to a particular university and studied particular things and been involved in a particular movement right from, my teenage years. If it weren't for teachers making me feel comfortable to come out to them, as a kid, then I don't think I would be as secure and able to do the work that I am able to do now, because I wouldn't be as secure in myself. I think it's all about creating that environment where people can learn and not feel afraid to ask questions. We talk about it in the workplace a lot. It's like this theory of psychological safety, just not being afraid to put yourself out there. And I think that's crucial for kids to and young adults to be able to learn in having a psychologically safe environment. And I definitely felt like I had that as a kid. As a young adult at university, I went to a predominantly white university where I didn't necessarily feel as safe to say things as I do now. So that probably had a bit of an impact on me. But definitely during my teenage years that I felt very safe to do so. What about you, Emma?
Growing up, so I'm a gay woman, and at school I remember thinking about my sexuality, but same-sex relationships were never taught because of a damaging piece of legislation called Section 28, which effectively banned any teacher from talking about LGBT inclusion or same-sex relationships. So growing up as a kid, I didn't really have those spaces to explore that part of my sexual identity until I went to university or drama school. And then, everyone was so liberal and open and things were talked about. And I was able to express myself in the way that I felt comfortable. In terms of my race and ethnicity, I went to a multicultural school in London, experienced racism growing up because my mum's white, my dad's black. I was always trying to figure out which camp I fitted in, because I was seen as neither one nor the other in some spaces. So that was quite difficult. And then we moved out of London when I was 11 to Wiltshire, lovely part of the country. But just didn't really see many people that looked like me in my school. I was probably one of 3 people of colour in my year. So that was quite challenging. But my mum always surrounded me with the black side of my culture. I was always exposed to books and films or TV shows, and obviously members of my family. So in terms of like talking about race and racism, that's something I've always been able to express quite easily, unfortunately.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing those experiences. And just to kind of round it off very quickly to both of you, what is one thing, and I know it's probably going to be hard to choose one thing, but what is one thing you both love most about your work?
Oh,
choose one thing, isn't it?
yeah, it's hard. There's so many things I love. I think it's something Alex said earlier about those conversations that you have with people at an individual level. I love going down rabbit holes and just talking to people about the difference we can make in the world, and what we're trying to do. A lot of it's, aspirational, but that's the part of my job where I can just switch off from all the strategy and all the, KPIs and just have like real meaningful conversations. And it makes it worth it. So that, talking to people at an individual level is probably what I like the most.
Love that. And Alex, what about yourself?
And I think it's similar. But for me, it's the work, as Emma said, is so hard sometimes, and you deal with really, intense and emotional issues. And sometimes it can be quite draining. So yeah, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. But then there are those moments of joy where you see somebody. D&I particularly is a place where you can see people really be themselves, and they're not necessarily able to do that in other parts of their job or other parts of their life. And when you see somebody who was, say, for example, incredibly shy and didn't really want to attend a workshop, and then at the end of it they're just like the most engaged person and they want to carry on the work, and those moments of kind of joy that you see in people, I think that's the most beautiful thing about the work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you both so much for coming on today. You have both been absolutely amazing and shared some great information, and this has been such a great conversation. So yeah, just want to say, just again, thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thanks for having us. It's been fantastic. So yeah, I've loved it.
Amazing. Thank you both. Thank you.
Bye.
So thank you to everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in today, and we look forward to seeing you again for another episode on Thursday at 4:30. Thank you.